Whispers of fate. The world we inhabit often persuades us into believing in its uniqueness. Satellites orbit above us, glowing wires of information pulse beneath our feet, and invisible networks bind us into a vast, trembling web of voices, images, and numbers. We are tempted to whisper to ourselves, "Surely no one before has lived like this. Surely we stand at a height that no ancient eyes could dream of." And yet, if one sits quietly enough, if one allows the noise of the present to dissolve into silence, there emerges from the dust of ruins and the faded ink of forgotten scrolls a sound, faint, shivering, insistent. It is the voice of the past, carrying messages across centuries. It tells us that what we endure today, pandemics that circle the globe, rifts that tear societies apart, hunger for wealth that devours the earth, the swelling pride of nations on the brink of hubris, none of these are new. They are echoes, repetitions, loops in the grand wheel of destiny. They are the whispers of fate. History is not an empty tomb filled with dry bones of numbers and names. It is a diary written in blood, tears, and ash. Each civilization inscribed its pages with triumph and tragedy, with the glitter of empires and the silence of their collapse. The parchment of time is heavy with prophecies, warnings, and laments that were ignored. And in that ignoring, fate found its doorway. For every time humanity refused to listen, the wheel turned, grinding cities into dust and leaving only stones to bear witness. Consider Rome. It rises before our eyes, a colossus in marble and bronze, armies stretching their shadow across continents, legions stamping rhythm upon the earth. To the Romans, their world felt eternal. They called their city Urbs Eterna, the eternal city, believing that no hand of man nor breath of time could undo it. And yet, Rome was not toppled by the swords of barbarians alone. The seeds of ruin germinated within its own walls. The yawning gulf between rich and poor widened until the streets themselves seemed to groan beneath it. Senators schemed for power, emperors indulged in excess, and the soil of Italy, once fertile, was leached and broken. Forests vanished beneath axes, aqueducts strained, and the cries of slaves echoed through the marble halls. For decades before the fall, voices warned, philosophers, statesmen, commoners who felt the ground cracking beneath their feet. But who listens when the harvest is plentiful, when spectacles dazzle the crowd, when the coins of empire still clink in the palm? Rome crumbled not in a single night of fire, but in the long dusk of ignored warnings. The eternal city learned that eternity is but a word, fragile against the tides of fate. Travel farther back, to the banks of the Nile, where Egypt once bloomed like a garden watered by the gods. Here, kings raised monuments that pierced the sky, convinced that stone itself would preserve their names forever. They understood the rhythm of the Nile's flood, the balance between river, soil, and harvest. Yet even this wisdom was not enough when pride deafened their ears. The floods grew erratic, the soil weakened, and famine gnawed at the edges of plenty. Instead of adapting, rulers tightened their grip, demanding offerings for temples and monuments, as if stone could feed the belly. The whispers of fate were clear, the river was faltering, the land pleading for rest. But Egypt chose denial, and so a civilization that glittered for millennia dimmed into sand and silence, its gods abandoned, its palaces crumbling beneath the desert wind. Step into the green labyrinth of Central America, where temples of the Maya once rose like stairways into the heavens. Their cities were marvels of stone and astronomy, their priests reading the dance of stars as if deciphering the very breath of eternity. But even they, so attuned to cosmic rhythm, could not resist the blindness of power. Climate shifted, Rains failed, and the once thriving fields shriveled into dust. Rival city-states turned upon each other, spilling blood upon stones carved with gods of war. Instead of unity, they chose division. Instead of adaptation, they clung to rituals of old, hoping sacrifice could call back the rain. But fate does not bend to denial. The jungle reclaimed their temples, the voices of kings sank beneath vines, and the great calendars stopped their song. Today, the ruins whisper beneath the ceiba trees. We too believed we were eternal, and we too vanished. Further east, the land between the rivers, Mesopotamia, cradled some of the earliest dreams of civilization. There, in the shadow of ziggurats, scribes pressed wedges into clay, recording harvests, hymns, and omens. But even here, at the dawn of history, the pattern revealed itself. Over-irrigation salted the earth, fields turned barren, and cities that once glittered like jewels were abandoned to sand. Again the whispers spoke. Balance is fragile, hubris costly. And again, humanity ignored the voice until silence answered. And what of Greece, land of philosophers, poets, and warriors? It gave us Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. It lit the torch of democracy and inquiry. But even Athens, radiant in marble and thought, was not immune. Internal strife, corruption, and war with rival states drained its strength. Leaders pursued glory over wisdom, empire over harmony, and so the Parthenon, once a beacon, became a relic. Greece did not vanish entirely, but its brilliance dimmed, leaving behind fragments, statues without arms, temples without roofs, words preserved on fragile scrolls that outlasted the cities that once spoke them. Across these civilizations, a pattern emerges, as if fate itself were writing the same story again and again upon different pages of earth. Inequality, hubris, disregard for nature, the blindness of rulers, the intoxication of power, each a note in the song of downfall. And scattered throughout this chorus are voices, lonely and unheeded, who tried to warn. Cassandra stands among them, the doomed prophetess of Troy. She saw the truth, the wooden horse, the fire, the ruin of her city. Her lips formed the warning, her eyes burned with foresight, and yet none believed her. She became the eternal symbol of those cursed to speak wisdom into deaf ears. How many Cassandras has history cast aside? In every age there are seers, thinkers, dreamers who glimpse the cliff ahead while the crowd dances toward it. Their words are drowned by laughter, ignored in the thunder of ambition. Only when the fall comes does silence vindicate them. Even in modern memory, the pattern repeats. Before the Great Depression of 1929, voices whispered of danger, speculation swelling beyond reason, debts mounting like storm clouds. Yet who wanted to listen when markets soared, when wealth seemed endless, when the world felt invincible? Then came the crash, and the whispers became screams. So too in our own century, scientists warn of climate unraveling, of seas rising, forests burning, glaciers retreating into memory. Yet too often these warnings are treated as distant murmurs, background noise against the loud carnival of the present. The whispers of fate are never absent. They are with us now, threading through the roar of engines, the glow of screens, the debates of parliaments. They remind us that every empire has believed in its own exception. Every society has called itself unique, and yet the ground beneath them proved otherwise. The challenge is not whether fate speaks, it always does, but whether we will listen. And thus the question returns to us, are we truly different, or merely another verse in the repeating song of history? The ruins of Rome, the sands of Egypt, the jungles of the Maya, the tablets of Mesopotamia, the broken columns of Greece, all lean toward us and whisper, "You are not as new as you believe." We too thought ourselves eternal. We too ignored the warnings. Learn from us or join us in silence. And so the wheel turns, carrying us from the dust of fallen empires into the sharp brightness of the modern age. The ruins lie behind us, but their echoes linger in our steps. We walk upon roads laid by the past, often unaware of the bones beneath the stone. We tell ourselves that we have transcended the old cycles, that our machines, our sciences, our politics have broken the ancient curse. Yet if one listens carefully, one hears the same whispers threading through the noise of engines, the hum of networks, the fever of cities. The language of fate has not changed, only the scenery has shifted. The 20th century, so often called an age of progress, was also an age of fire. It began with optimism, with steel rails binding continents and airplanes lifting human dreams into the sky. Electricity lit the night, medicine promised longer life, and nations proclaimed a dawn of reason. Yet beneath the triumph, the old patterns stirred. Pride swelled in capitals, flags unfurled like weapons, and the thirst for dominance burned as fiercely as in any emperor's heart. The world wars were not accidents of machinery. They were the ancient hubris reborn in new uniforms. In 1914, when the guns thundered across Europe, millions believed the war would be short, decisive, and glorious. But the whispers of fate spoke otherwise. The trenches became graves of mud and iron, where youth withered in clouds of poison gas, where progress turned against its makers. The poets of that generation, like Cassandra's reborn, wrote of doom, of a world unraveling, but their voices were drowned in the roar of cannons. The war ended, but peace was brittle, built on vengeance rather than wisdom. The seeds of another conflict lay hidden in the soil, waiting for the right storm to awaken them. And awaken they did. The rise of fascism, the shouts of crowds intoxicated by promises of greatness, the blind faith in leaders who demanded obedience. All of these were warnings, patterns once inscribed.